Jordan Davis has played good enough to earn that fifth-year option worth a little over $12 million. But if he wants an extension with the Philadelphia Eagles, we need to see more. I'll tell you why coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Thursday edition of the show. I'm your host, Louis DiBiase. This episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Lockdown to learn more. The Philadelphia Eagles officially, and I would say finally, placed the fifth-year option on Jordan Davis, keeping him not just through 2025, but also through 2026. The option is worth a little over $12 million, which isn't really too pricey. When you look at what other defensive tackles make around $12 million, 12 to 13 annually, it's like in that BJ Hill kind of tier. So not crazy to pay Jordan Davis for who he is right now. $12.5 million, keep him for a couple more years. I do think that who he is right now is worth that contract. A really good two-down run stopper that could be more. I think that's worth picking up the option on. And I do think the Eagles want to extend him early to a team-friendly deal. Maybe this offseason, maybe it's halfway through the regular season, to see if he can start to break out as a pass rusher. It'll be interesting to see what they do. They could wait until next year or halfway through this year to see if he's going to start to break out, or take the gamble on this being who he is to get a better deal for the team, rather than have Davis break out and then he wants to hold out for more money like Milton Williams got, or Moro Ojomo could get, like most tackles will probably get after having a lot of one-on-one success in the pass rush game next to Jalen Carter. So I imagine the Eagles want to not only pick up the option, but get him locked up to almost like when they paid Reed Blankenship last year to that extension that was very team-friendly. I think that's what they'll want to do with Jordan Davis. Now, when it comes to is he worth the fifth-year option, is he worth a potential extension? I think even if he never becomes Dexter Lawrence, who has always been the ceiling that we talk about with JD, or maybe Vita Vea, right? A really elite run stopper that does eventually take that step as a pass rusher. Maybe he's not a 12-sack-a-year guy, but you can bank on 4 to 7 every single year. On a really good year, it's 7.5 to 8. On a down year, it's still like 3.5 to 5. Like, that's your floor and your ceiling. Even if he never becomes the Dexter Lawrence ceiling of this past year, we had 9 sacks. I think he can still be worth an extension. Like, if he ends up just being who he is right now as a run stopper, which is top tier in football, in my opinion. It's a very important role for this defense. It's a very underrated role in this defense. $12 million, like I said, it's like BJ Hill money. That's not that bad. So if he never takes it to the ultimate level the Eagles expected when they moved up to the 13th overall selection to take him in 2022, I would still want Jordan Davis long term. But I will say there's a middle ground. Like, yeah, he doesn't have to be Dexter Lawrence, but he also can't be who he was in 2024. If he's going to be worth even this $12 million on the fifth-year option, this year, next year, if he's going to be worth an extension of any kind, whether it's $15 million a year, $20 million a year, he cannot play just 37% of the snaps. Like, Jordan Davis has to do more to earn a contract extension. I think he's done enough to earn the fifth-year option the Eagles picked up. But if they're going to extend him even to a team-friendly deal, he's got to play more. Simply put, he needs to be more consistent as a pass rusher. He needs to be more consistent as a player that's in shape. In the second half of the year, conditioning continues to be a problem with JD. He needs to be able to be a player that plays 45 to 50% of the snaps, or close to that, especially now that Milton Williams is gone. The guy have high hopes for Moro Ojomo and Ty Robinson, the Eagles' new rookie fourth-round pick out of Nebraska. But 37% of the snaps, and you're going to pay this guy almost $13 million a year? You're going to extend him to a long-term contract? Like, no, I'm sorry. I don't need him to be Dexter Lawrence. Like, I'm coming to terms with, and he still could be. Dexter Lawrence didn't have more than 4 sacks in a season throughout his first 3 years. Then he broke out in year 4 with 7.5 sacks. Jordan Davis is heading into that 4th year. Vita Vea really didn't emerge as a pass rusher either until year 4 or 5, and now he gets about 6 to 7 a year. So there's still hope that he meets that ceiling. I don't think he'll ever get to that level, but I do think he has it in him to be a lot more than what he was last year with just 1 sack in the regular season. Like the fact that he was the 4th guy in that rotation, even though Milton Williams and Moro Ojomo were extremely underrated, and Milton Williams saw a bag, like he was elite, the number 1 pass rusher win rate in all of football. Moro Ojomo was number 6, so he wasn't far behind Williams next to Jalen Carter. Even though those guys were studs, your first round pick from a few years ago, a 13th overall selection that you traded up for, being a 4th guy, playing 37% of the snaps is not good enough. So he needs to find that middle ground. Like he needs to be good enough as a rusher to be an option on all 3 downs. Maybe he's not the go-to guy next to Jalen Carter. I think that will be Ojoma or eventually somebody else they bring in, but he needs to be an option. And last year, he was not an option in obvious pass rushing situations. He needs to get there. He needs to be able to have 3 to 5 sacks a year. Like the floor of Vita Vea and Dexter Lawrence is where he needs to get to at least for me to feel comfortable extending his contract. So if he gets there, then I'm all in. And I do think he has it in him to be more. I truly think he could be Dexter Lawrence or Vita Vea. He has the explosiveness. He has the tools in his body. He has the size, the length, the power. He has quick hands. And maybe he's turning a corner. He had a sack in the NFC Championship. He had a sack in the Super Bowl. So he only had 1 sack in the regular season, but he did have 2 in the playoffs. He had 2 sacks in the 2 most important games of the 2024 season. So maybe he's turning the corner. And hopefully he does, because he's got it in him. Like, he has rare traits. He's a unicorn. There's a reason the Eagles traded up for him in 2022. Clint Hurt is a really good developer of talent, the Eagles defensive line coach. If anybody's going to get it out of JD, it's going to be Clint Hurt. Hopefully that progress in the playoffs carries over into 2025 for his sake and for the Eagles. Because the Eagles need him more this year than even last year. Without Milton Williams, who knows if Moro Ojomo is going to be able to take on more, if he'll truly break out, or if he's kind of a solid 3rd guy in a rotation. Ty Robinson might be a steal of a pick on day 3 in the 4th round. But Jordan Davis this year, there's no Milton Williams. There's no Fletcher Cox. There's no, go back to 2022, Linval Joseph, Ndamukong Suh, Javon Hargrave. Like, this is the most important season of Jordan Davis's career because the Eagles need him a lot more. And if he wants to get paid, he's got to show more as a pass rusher. Not just as a pass rusher, but he's just got to be able to stay on the football field. To be an elite run stopper, too, he's got to be able to stay on the football field. In the second half of the season, he's got to be better in shape. So that's kind of where I stand with JD. I'm kind of in the middle. Like, I don't hate the 5th-year option pickup. I'm comfortable extending him, even if he doesn't become the star the Eagles thought he would be in the 13th overall pick slot of 2022. Like, I don't think he has no role here. I think he plays an underrated part. But at the same time, I do need to see more. I'm not happy with who he is right now. We've seen flashes. We need to see it more consistent. We need to see him get to the quarterback more. We need to see him just be an option on the football field at all times. And it feels like there's a lot of moments, there's a lot of situations, there's a lot of times at the end of the year where I think the coaches don't think he is a reliable player that they can go to, they can count on to be out there and just put a lot on his plate. His snap count went down. Like, 2023, he was at 43%, and then last year he was at 37%. It went down by 6%, and you lost Fletcher Cox. You didn't really add anybody. You lost one of your key players at the top of this position's depth chart, and your snap count percentage went down by 6%. And now some of that's not his fault. The Eagles were blowing teams out, and they were just throwing the football at will in the second half of games to try to catch up. But that kind of makes my point. Jordan Davis in those situations, in those kind of games, isn't on the football field. For me to feel comfortable paying him long-term, he's got to be an option. Again, that's the theme of this segment. He doesn't have to be the go-to guy as a pass rusher. That's what you have Jalen Carter for. That's what you're about to pay him $35 to $40 million a year for. But he's got to be an option. And I think he could be. I'm skeptical, but I think he could be. The Eagles believe it. Again, that fifth-year option pickup, a potential extension, a lot of that still is based off projection. I think the Eagles are still paying Jordan Davis for what he could be rather than what he is, but I do understand that logic. I do. He plays a very important position, a very underrated role, and if he can do more, if Jordan Davis becomes a really good pass rusher at his size, my God, what a golden goose that would be. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, I want to dive into some of the UDFAs the Eagles have signed. Is there a hidden gem, if you will, a new Reed Blankenship coming to the Eagles in 2025? We'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. All right, episode listeners of Locked On Eagles, on this Thursday edition of the show, we are brought to you by Gametime. The Gametime app is awesome. There's nothing like the atmosphere of a playoff game, right? The NHL, the NBA, every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets. Even when the demand is sky high, prices on the app actually do go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60% off. I love their all-in pricing. No surprise fees at checkout. You can save up to 60% buying last-minute tickets for sports, but not just sporting events, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so the Philadelphia Eagles had 10 draft picks for the 2025 draft class, but they weren't done bringing in talent after the draft. Howie Roseman busy at work, bringing in a lot of UDFAs, a lot of undrafted free agents, and I like some of these players. You know, when you look at the Eagles' success, their track record over the last, I'd say really since Howie came back to being the GM in 2016, even in years where they weren't great picking on day one and day two, especially day one, it just felt like every year they were finding at least one or two key contributors on this offense or defense from day three picks or undrafted free agents, right? You could go back to 2017 with Corey Clement, a UDFA running back out of Wisconsin, ends up leading your team in receiving in Super Bowl 52, your first ever championship win. The leading receiver on your football team was an undrafted running back who we all thought did not have receiving ability. We thought it was going to be Donnell Pumphrey that year that took over as that kind of player, and it was Corey Clement. Even the year after, I know people probably don't love hearing this name because he was the best of a bad situation, but Josh Adams led the Eagles in rushing in 2018. As a UDFA from the University of Notre Dame, like that's a great signing. Yeah, he only had a little over 500 to 600 rushing yards, but for a UDFA, that's good. That's a home run signing for an undrafted free agent. Crave on the block that year. You didn't sign him coming right out of the draft, but he was a UDFA that ended up being a really good slot starter for you in a playoff run, almost to the NFC Championship game. You look at 2019. Look at all the late round, undrafted, just no names that a lot of people didn't know that helped Carson Wentz, or at least tried to help him, win an NFC East championship, and they ended up pulling it off in 2019, 2020. Like, they get contributions from, you know, Joshua Perkins and Deontay Burnett and Robert Davis and Greg Ward, of course, is like the most obvious name of hidden gems the Eagles have found to be good role players for this football team over the years. 2020, they get Travis Fulgham. They've been very good at finding diamonds in the rough. Not always to be stars at the next level, to be full-time starters, long-term core pieces, but to be role players, whether it's for 1 year or for a few. The Eagles, every year, it's like they nail at least one of these signings. And obviously the big one as of late, the last few years, is Reed Blankenship. Back in 2022, a UDFA safety that ends up being a key role player in that Super Bowl run of 2022. And since then, he's been a full-time starter the last 2 seasons and a very clutch ball hawk in the fourth quarter of games, a very reliable tackler. Reed Blankenship, what an incredible story. The Eagles are probably going to give him a contract extension, I'd imagine, at some point within the next year or two. Who could be that guy this year? The Eagles brought in a lot of players. They've invited a lot of prospects, too, that I do like. If I had to choose 3 of the UDFAs they brought in that I think could be your new Corey Clement, your new Josh Adams, your new Cravon LeBlanc, Travis Fulgham, your new Reed Blankenship. I think 3 guys interest me the most. One of them is UNC edge rusher, Kamen Rucker, Rutgers tackle, a mammoth of a man, Holland Pierce, and Florida running back Montrell Johnson Jr. Those are the 3 players that I want to highlight the most. Now, there are some other guys, too. They brought in another running back from Central Arkansas, Derek Powell, 4,000 yards with Central Arkansas, 42 touchdowns in his career. I love that. I want a FCS player to dominate FCS competition if he's going to make it at the next level of the NFL. I like the BJ Mays signing, a 6'1 corner out of Texas A&M. Versatility with great ball skills, can play in the slot, can play on the outside. You have Wake Forest receiver / punt returner Taylor Morin. I think he could be an interesting name to win a job in a thin receiver room. But the 3 guys that interest me the most, though, are Kamen Rucker from UNC, the edge rusher, Holland Pierce, the tackle from Rutgers, and then Montrell Johnson Jr., the Florida running back. Because when you look at those 3 players, they have traits that could translate to the next level. They have an opportunity at their position to win a job. Kamen Rucker has not been signed, but the Eagles did invite him to training camp. He had 22 sacks with UNC in his career. 2023, he was an all-ACC selection with 8.5 sacks, 15 tackles for loss. Last year, in just 8 games, 6 sacks in 8 games, and 8 tackles for a loss. Now, I think why he dropped, pretty undersized, has some injury concerns. Don't know exactly what he's going to do at the next level, what position he'll play full-time. But I think his job is to get to the quarterback. And I think he is really explosive off the edge. Like his first step, he is a fast rusher. He's a speedball. He's bendy. He's so productive. Again, 22 sacks in his career with the Tar Heels. If he does accept his invite, between him and Powell Ryland and Patrick Johnson, those guys are going to battle it out for that 5th spot on the edge rotation, right? I think they'll end up keeping 5. I think you have your top 4 locked in. It's Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt, Azeez Ojulari, Joshua Uche, and then Jihad Campbell, I think, is going to be listed as an inside linebacker, but he'll play a huge role in that room as well. I think there's room for one more guy. Patrick Johnson's probably the favorite right now because he plays special teams. He's been on this team before. Bryce Huff, I think, is going to be on the outs. I think he'll end up getting traded. So it's going to be between Patrick Johnson, Powell Ryland, your 7th-round pick, and then Kamen Rucker if he accepts the invitation this summer. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up winning a job. If he has a really good preseason and he gets to the quarterback. I saw a lot of mock drafts early in the process in like January, February, early March, where Rucker was a late day 2 pick, early day 3 selection. So I think this is actually a steal if they end up bringing him in. And then Holland Pierce. You guys probably remember this name because I brought him into the Eagles on Mock Draft Monday a few times on day 3. A mammoth of a man. On our squad show today with the guys, Mark Farzetta, Harry Mays, Jason Murtis, I did mention Holland Pierce as almost a King Dunlap lookalike. He just looks, and that really just means he looks like a massive human being. 6'8", 341 pounds. Now, I don't know what he's going to be at the next level, but for the same reason as I like the drafting of Hinton, of Williams, of Kendall, just get Howie Roseman's draft picks to Jeff Stoutland. Let them be talented offensive linemen that are athletic, that are massive human beings. Even if they're raw, if they have lower floors than other players at their position, at other prospects of a different position, just give Jeff Stoutland those balls of clay, and let's see if he can mold them into something. Maybe it's not a starter, a star like Jordan Mailata, but maybe it's just a Halapuli Vadi Vaitai, a really solid swing backup lineman that can play tackle and guard, right? Or center and guard. Kamen Rucker, 6'8", 341. Let's just see what he's got at tackle. Let's see. Between him, Hinton, and Williams, law of averages of the 3, one of them has got to pan out, right? At Stoutland University to be a solid backup. There's no way all 3 of them bust. I can't imagine that happens. So I like just bringing in a bunch of talented offensive linemen, just unique physical skill sets, and give them to Stout. And that's what Holland Pierce says. Again, 6'8", 341. Do you know what that looks like standing next to you? It doesn't even look like a human being. It's awesome. I love it. I love it. I love that they brought in Howland Pierce. But the player I'm most excited about in this UDFA pool, I think when it comes to undrafted free agents, the best chance to hit on one of these guys, I think, is normally at running back. Montrell Johnson Jr. from Florida is a player I'm really excited about. I think running backs translate the easiest to the NFL of really any position. I think it's the easiest position to succeed at the next level, going from college to the pros, and it's why people just refuse to pay this position in the NFL, because you can get them a dime a dozen. You could get a day 3 pick or an undrafted free agent like Corey Clement or Josh Adams to help you in the Super Bowl or lead your team in rushing. I think Montrell Johnson could end up having a role in this backfield. He has really good sudden burst, really good cut ability. His vision at the second and third level is awesome. 4.42 speed. Broke so many big runs free with the Gators. Had a 9.63 raw athletic score. A very, very talented player. Runs really hard upfield. You know, he's good vision, good cut ability, good speed. He looks for the big play, but he also knows when to stick his foot in the ground, get upfield, get his shoulder down, and fight for more yards. He also plays with a good physicality that I really like. A.J. Dillon, I like his style. I want him to be a power back behind Saquon Barkley that can stay healthy. But a neck injury kept him out of all of the 2024 season. So this guy could end up being a new Rashad Penny, a big name we know because he was a top 2-round pick that ends up not doing much. If you told me that Montrell Johnson ends up beating out A.J. Dillon for a spot next to Will Shipley in that rotation behind Saquon Barkley, I'm not predicting it, but I wouldn't be surprised at all. So those are the 3 guys that I could see, not predicting, again, because it's UDFAs. You never know with these guys. I'm not going to predict jack for these prospects. But these are the 3 guys I could see contributing the most if they make the roster. Kamen Rucker, Montrell Johnson Jr., and Howland Pierce. All right, guys, we'll wrap up this Thursday edition of Locked On Eagles. Coming up next, I want to go back to the Georgia Bulldog discussion, thinking about Jordan Davis' 5th-year option, what to do with Nakobe Dean after 1 year, a Jalen Hurts extension, I should say Jalen Carter extension, coming up soon. Is there a Bulldog bias with Howie Roseman? I'll tell you what I mean by that coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. Today's episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick in 4K. Did you know your Fire TV Stick is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25, Call of Duty, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. You get games as well. What if you could just jump into your favorite Xbox title without needing your console in every room? You can do that now with the Fire TV Stick 4K device. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Lockdown to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd generation. All right, we're wrapping up this Thursday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Does Howie Roseman have a Bulldog bias? Like, does keeping all the Georgia defensive players together, does that impact Howie's decision-making process at all? Like, I thought about this. I think the strategy to take one of the best college defenses of all time that won back-to-back national championships, to take that defense and to pretty much bring it over to your defense at the next level, getting these athletic freaks at important positions like Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Keely Ringo. Then you bring in Azeez Ojulari this year. You get Lewis Seen last year off the practice squad of the Buffalo Bills. That's 7 or 8 Georgia Bulldogs from that 2020-2021 defense. That idea was brilliant. And it was a huge reason that the Eagles won a Super Bowl in 2024. That was one of the best strategies a GM has ever had. And it sounds so simple and obvious, like let's take the best defense in college football and let's draft all their guys. It's easier said than done. They needed a lot of luck. They needed guys like Carter to fall in their lap at pick 9. They needed Nolan Smith to fall in their lap at pick 30. They needed those phantom injury concerns with Nakobe Dean to have him fall to the third round, or they had to be able to trade up for Keely Ringo. A lot has had to go right for this strategy to work, but it did work out brilliantly. And I think the chemistry these guys have on and off the field has really helped the Eagles' locker room culture. It's helped their defense with, like I said, that on-field chemistry, the maturity of these guys, the way they can handle both success and failure. They're mature for young players because they've done it before. They've won championships. You know, they bring in a championship culture, and I really do think those guys and the Bama guys have helped turn this Eagles program around since 2020. It's not a coincidence they've made 2 Super Bowls since this strategy has been a main part of Howie's philosophy, and you've won a Super Bowl. So with all that being said, though, I do wonder if keeping all these guys together does impact Howie's decision-making process when it comes to deciding on each individual player, whether to keep them short-term or long-term. When it comes to paying Jordan Davis, are they willing to keep him or pay him a little bit more than what he's worth if it keeps Jalen Carter happy and healthy, I guess you could say? Does keeping Nakobe Dean after this year, paying him, he's going to be a UFA after 2025. Does keeping this whole group together impact Howie at all? Like, does it have any impact on their decision-making process with Keely Ringo? Did it impact their decision in bringing in Azeez Ojulari on a 1-year deal? I do wonder. I don't think Howie's going to say, I got to keep these guys together no matter what. So even if Jordan Davis doesn't take that next step as a pass rusher, I got to give him that $20+ million a year extension. Like, no, I don't think he's going to do that. I don't think he's going to say, we have to start Keely Ringo to keep all these Georgia guys happy, to keep them together. Like, no, I don't think it's a main part of his process. I'm not saying he's not going to make a move on one of these players, let one of them go, trade them, because he's nervous about breaking up the band. I don't think that's a main part of what he's going for. But I do think it has to have some impact in all of this, right? It has to. Because it's worked out so well, and these guys have such a strong bond, and I think the Eagles really do prioritize locker room culture now and team chemistry so much more than maybe they used to, that I'm sure it does impact things. I'm sure they are a little bit more willing to pay Jordan Davis to keep him around, to keep Nakobe Dean around, or Keely Ringo, because of their bond with each other. Now, they have to be good players as well. They got to be worth keeping. Like, you have to have a certain floor. But I don't know. I think it is a part of it. And I've always been curious about that. Ever since they brought in all these guys after 2023, I'm like, what happens when these guys are all up for new contracts around the same time? What happens when a couple of them don't get those deals, but some do? Like, how will that affect the dynamic? Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I do think it plays a part. And I think Howie Roseman should have that impact the process, because I think it's really benefited this defense to have all these guys so close and to have this kind of chemistry on all 3 levels. It's not just 2 players playing next to each other, and JD and Carter and Nolan Smith, but you've got Nakobe Dean right behind them. They know how to work off each other, right? And then Keely Ringo at corner. They all know how to communicate and how to work in sync with each other. That's so important in a defense in the NFL. That communication is key. So wanting to keep all of them together, or a lot of them, most of them, I would understand if that was a part of Howie's process. It shouldn't be a main part. Like, if Jordan Davis is playing 37% of the snaps again in 2025, like, I am not paying him beyond 2026. But I do think it plays a part. And I thought about that yesterday after JD's got his 5th-year option picked up. And so I think it's interesting. That's one dynamic that you didn't really think about probably when they brought in all these Georgia guys, is what happens when they all need money, when they all need to get paid. Fascinating to see how that plays out. The good thing is most of them are earning the extensions. Like, Jalen Carter is going to get $30+ million a year. He'll probably get that Myles Garrett contract after next year. You know, Nolan Smith's going to get paid as well if he continues to ascend. Nakobe Dean's been really good. I could see them paying him as well. Keely Ringo I have high hopes for as a starter this year. And then, of course, you've got now Azeez Ojulari. We'll see what happens with Lewis Seen. That's the good thing is Jordan Davis even, most of them are earning their roles long-term. So it's not like it's nepotism or a Georgia. There's not really a Bulldog bias, but there might just be a little bit, because I do think they want to keep this core together. And most of them are Georgia Bulldogs, so they want to see them grow together in the NFL. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Make sure your second listen is the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast with our guys Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs. Get to know all your Eagles draft prospects of 2025 with Krabs and Marino, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.